welcome back to another episode of Adventure Within. Today I am joined by Melissa Monte. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. And when I got your email about like how to turn your trauma into your superpower, I was just like, I must know. I'm, I must know. Like, even if I don't record it and do an interview, I still must know. Like, but I always start off with all of my guests, because we're a spiritual channel, I always start off with, where did your spiritual journey begin?
Ah, it's interesting because now I see that we're all always on a spiritual journey, whether we claim it or not. And so that's
Right.
what I see in my own story. But I was raised pretty deeply religious, and it never quite felt right. I had a lot of questions, and the questions weren't always welcomed. And so I often felt like I was the one in the room faking it. But we were so deeply involved in the church. We were there 5 days a week, all day, Sunday, choir, leadership, all the things. But when I was 15, I was sexually assaulted at a party. And it was really the first time I remember being drunk.
Oh, I'm
And
so sorry, girl.
I was I really internalized that. And it's interesting. It wasn't until the Me Too movement that I saw it through fresh eyes.
Mm.
I kind of thought, and also with the church's reaction to it, I I was assaulted while I was unconscious, and there was a group of people kind of
Mm.
cheering on my abuser. And so it spread around school really quickly, but I didn't really know how to handle it. I didn't have that experience. And so, as I said, I kind of internalized it as this was my first sexual experience, and I was drinking, so it was my fault. And
Oh.
the church heard that I was sexually active, and they took away my solos in choir. And I got really angry at that point, even though there
Yeah.
was like a split in consciousness there. I felt shame and I blamed myself, but I also, there's another part of me that was like, aren't you supposed to help me through this? And
Mm-hmm.
so I,
Mm-mm.
I stopped going to church. I refused to go to church at that point for
Right.
the first time. And I also decided I was fine. I knew a little bit about self-development. My dad used to pay me to read different books. And so I remember really
Mm.
latching on to Mind Over Matter when I was about 13. And so I was like, Mind Over
Mm.
Matter, this isn't going to affect me. But I didn't know the depth of healing. So I couldn't see that you can't just mind over your matter deep trauma. And so it
Right.
was manifesting in ways that I didn't really have any control over because I refused to look at it.
Mm.
I had a few more traumas in the next couple of years. A close friend died by suicide, and my dad died of cancer
Oh.
my first week of college or my first year of college. And so I was going through a lot and still just trying to be the life of the party, still trying to be my happy
Mm.
self.
Putting the mask on.
Mhm.
Nothing to see
And
here. Yeah.
there was, I started losing pieces of myself without even realizing it. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think losing yourself is this dramatic moment where everything falls apart. It's
It's
slower
lit.
than that. It's like
Yeah.
each year, each small hit to my worth, each time I pushed down what I was really feeling. It was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like that thing about putting a frog in water and slowly turning up the heat. I had
Ah.
no idea how much of myself was disappearing. But the less I valued myself, the more I craved validation. And the worse I treated myself, the worse I let others treat me. And so
Mm.
when my dad died, it really felt like whatever fragile sense of self I had left died with him. And so I do what a lot of us do when the pain gets too big. I just tried to make myself numb.
Uh-huh.
Bulimia, pills, alcohol, whatever promised to make me feel something else. I was
Right.
really
Like, I want to feel
craving
anything
sensation.
but what's actually in my body.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was a thrill seeker, scary movies, got certified in skydiving, drinking every night, lots of MDMA. And so I was in this cycle of self-destruction, but it was like my normal just kept shifting.
Right.
And when I look back now, it's like I see it as I couldn't find anything to hold on to. So I was reaching for anything outside of myself to fill the
Right.
void. And then I
Right.
met a guy, and he
Of
swept me
course.
off my feet with five-star dinners and luxury resorts. And on our first date, he gave me this diamond necklace that made me feel valuable. And I wore
Wow.
it every day. But the lies started early, and I ignored a
Mm.
lot of them. But It was everything from we were staying in hotels all the time because his carpets were being cleaned. And then it turned out he lived with his mom. And then he said, "Oh,
Mm.
I'm living there to help with my disabled brother." And then his brother didn't live there and his disability was like mild ADD. And so every
Oh,
lie got a little bit bigger, but
oh,
somehow every excuse got easier to swallow. Like
right.
he was
Because
paying me.
because you were focusing on the he makes me feel good, right? Like,
Yeah.
because I've been there. I've been there. I've dated not quite that guy, but a similar guy.
And so I was just swallowing it all. He was like training me to deep throat his bullshit. And part of me knew something was off. And then I found out he was cheating on me repeatedly. And I
Oh,
buried that too because the apologies felt good. Then I discovered his
right.
meth addiction. And I remember being
Oh, Lord.
relieved because now it was like something outside of me to blame. But it was
Right.
like at that point, it's kind of like gambling. You're so invested. You're like, well, the next one's gonna hit, or I've invested too much. I can't lose it now. And
Right.
admitting to myself that it was all a lie also meant that the dream was dead. And
Right.
so
Hmm?
one afternoon we were driving to lunch and I saw police lights behind us and I thought it was a speeding ticket or a broken tail light, but then the officers asked us to get out of the car to search it. And I just remember them opening the trunk and giving us this look. And they found 50 lock boxes, bolt cutters, and cases of stolen jewelry. And so the jewelry business I thought he had was actually stealing it from houses that were for sale. And so he knew how to get into them.
Wow.
He told me he had a jewelry business with his dad. What he actually did with his dad was loans. And so he had access to the MLS reports for realtors where it's like, oh, these people don't live there anymore, or they live there and they're gone from 9 to 5. So he'd find the ones where they still lived there, but they were gone most of the day, break in during the day, just cut the lockbox,
Oh, he's sneaky.
bring it to his Mercedes Benz, jimmy out the key, and walk right in. And so no one reported him any suspicions because there was a Benz in the driveway and there's realtors going in. And
They always assume it's a white van.
yeah, exactly. Until he started, his meth addiction got really bad and he started getting sloppy and inviting his meth dealer to come and take the TVs in exchange for the meth. It was a whole thing. And his gambling addiction, he was just gambling it away. So it was just this like spiral. But we were arrested together, so I had a choice. If I took it to court, I could guarantee my innocence because there was about a month and a half before that I went to Hawaii to try to like get away from him and rebuild my life, which I did, but fell right back into it when I got back. And he went on
Mhm.
a spree during that time, and there were eyewitness accounts. And he had a sex worker he was cheating on me with, and he had my dog, and so there was a blonde girl and my dog. But
Mm.
I could have proven my innocence because I was in Hawaii that whole time. But if I did that, it would have guaranteed he got 10 years in jail, in prison, and or I could accept a felony and they promised me I wouldn't get jail time and I could get it expunged in a few years so he could take a deal too. And I was paying out of pocket for an attorney. He had a $50,000 attorney because he inherited money from his dad. And I was being coached by his mom and his attorney, and I was 21 years old. And so I took
Right.
a felony. And yeah, it was like at that point, I was giving him everything was almost a reflex. So I
Right.
took the felony. And I just remember sitting in that courtroom later, though, listening to his victims. And it was a military mother whose jewelry box held her dead son's baby hair that he stole, and an elderly couple missing decades of anniversary gifts. And he just showed no remorse. And I just remember
Mm.
something clicking at that moment. So I saw this pattern, this algorithm, how every small choice had led me to that police car. And I realized that every single day, yes, I could look at myself as a victim, but I had been creating this reality. Many people would have never ended up in that situation. They would have said no or saw the red flags so much earlier. So what was it about me that allowed me to get me there? What was it about the way I saw myself that thought I deserved any of that on some level, whether conscious or not?
Mhm.
And yeah, it took a while to unravel all of that and to build myself up enough to be at the perspective to see what I can see now. But it all brought me to story.
Yeah. Wow. Holy crap. I'm sitting here like, whoa, that is so much, so much. Like, girl, mm, That's insane. And God, he's sneaky. I'm like for a meth addict, he's quite genius. The terror
Oh,
and
he was a smart
most
guy, and
most criminals
nobody was
are.
suspected. Yeah, I mean, he looked like he knew people around town. He lived in the town that he was in. He grew up there, and he had connections, and he could speak well. Like you would have never guessed that
Never,
he was a
yeah.
Palm Desert protege. Like again, Mercedes Benz, Tommy Bahama. Like
Right, right, right. He
yeah,
masks, he hides behind the glitz and the glam.
yep, yep.
Yeah, because I mean, not to throw out a serial killer or compare, but Ted Bundy was well spoken, like he was a
No,
law student.
seriously.
Like, yeah, it was a thing. Holy crap. No, that's insane. But I even in my youth, I not obviously not the same situation, but I got into relationships where they weren't good. And I, like you're saying, like, oh, I felt like I didn't deserve any better. Or that was what somewhere on some level, that's what I deserved. Yeah, same. Like I look back at that and I'm like, wow, like I really did not value myself much at all. And I was just so happy to get the little bits of love
Mm.
because I was so desperate for it. So I'm like, oh, I feel you so hard here.
I remember being in college and I had just like hooked up with a stranger that didn't call me afterward. And I remember just having that like empty feeling. It's not like I liked him or anything, but just thinking to some of my high school friends who I knew could say no and wondered what was different about me.
hmm
And it took me again a long time to see that, but I connect that to a lot of different things, but also the sexual assault of like devaluing my body, also wanting, almost feeling like I was taking the power back by, it's like, you can't, this is going to sound awful, but you can't rape me if I don't say no. And
Mm.
uh,
And I'm like, oh, I've done it. I've done it. Like, yeah,
then also the
did the same
cliche,
thing.
like my parents were divorced when I was 6 months old. Like I didn't have that father figure to really tell me I was valuable, at least with enough, like seeing him enough to actually believe it, not just like on
Right,
random camping vacations he'd bring me on. And so,
right, right.
yeah, it was like a lot of cliches in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, it's like, oh, if I just let you, then you aren't taking it from me. Like, no, same, same. I've done
Or
because
also being like, oh, I'll be the cool one. Like, why would you like somebody who says no? But really, underneath that, it's not believing that you're valuable beyond what you can give them with your body, whether you
hmm
can see that or not. And it's so interesting having kind of that fragmented sense of self of like, on one hand, I really thought I had a great personality. I knew I was intelligent. I knew I was always making people laugh.
right.
I didn't trust that that's what other people wanted. And so I was like,
hmm
oh, well, I'll reel you in with my body and then I'll sell you on myself later if you call
Right.
back.
Right, right, right. Yeah. I'll get you with
Yeah.
this. Yeah. No, same. I did that many times. Or I would completely switch my personality around for what they were looking for. I
Mm,
would become exactly what they were looking for. Now, granted, I grew up on a farm, and so I understood like country speak and country everything. And so, like, if they wanted a girl to go hunting with, I'm your girl. You want a girl to drink beers with? I'm your girl. You want a girl to go fishing with? I'm your girl. And I haven't probably picked up a fishing pole in 10 years.
oh my gosh. That reminds me of, I did the same thing. Like, yeah, I'll pretend to like sports. I hated beer and sports, but I also remember with that same guy, one of the people he cheated on me with, it was like, he was convincing me how he chose me. And then at one point he's like, yeah, actually, she can't even get off through penetration. And it's just like, oh my God, why would you want a girl like that? Meanwhile, I didn't admit till I was 27 years old that I don't get off through penetration. And so in a way, I'm like eating myself inside, like, why can't I say that so I can actually receive pleasure instead of waiting until I'm actually comfortable in a marriage and I have to like break down to my husband? I'm really
Yes.
sorry, but I've been faking it with you even all of this time. I only get off with external penetration and now we need to figure this out. And I was so afraid that well, I was afraid of hurting him
Right.
in that moment.
Right.
Like I've been lying, like making him feel unworthy, like making, I thought that by sharing that, I was going to make them feel like less of a man. But
Hmm.
he was just like, oh my gosh, like, how do we fix this? Like, just easier to be the one. And God, he got good at it so quick. What are you
Good man. Good man. Love that. No, it's funny you say that because my husband's he called me out because I did. I faked it a lot when I was dating because I just wanted to make sure. Sorry, she started whining. No, but yeah, I faked it a lot whenever I was dating, because I didn't know how to find pleasure at all. Like I just was like, okay, this is just what they're doing, and it's Jackrabbit, and this is like the porn, so this is fine. And I had no idea what was pleasurable. And then my husband, like when we first were dating, he called me out. He could tell. And he like called me out and he was mad because I was lying to him. He said, "Don't ever lie to me. Don't ever lie to me." So that was like our first fight. So, but and of course, this is mine and my husband's channel, and I'm sure my husband's gonna edit this later and just be like, "Why are you sharing that?" But it's so powerful and it means a
I did a
lot.
whole episode on this a long time ago with a former celebrity, actually. And I got more people reaching out about that because it is such a problem. And it's funny
Mhm.
because I can still call it out sometimes. I can see it. I was in this women's group and there was this one woman and we were all kind of sharing in a vulnerable way, and she
Yeah.
just kind of went into that mode of like, oh man, don't you just sometimes need some penetration, blah blah blah. And then 3 days
Oh
into this
no.
event, I end up having a vulnerable moment with her, and I was like, were you being real about that? Because I just need to share my own personal story. And I shared my personal story and she broke down. And I
Hmm.
was like, we're even lying in front of other women. We're that
Hmm.
afraid to just show who we are and what makes us happy. And
Right.
instead, it's all about how do we please everybody else. And
Yep.
it's interesting because I even look back, we all have trauma in our lineage, but my dad's parents had a lot of trauma. He was the oldest of 7 kids, and my grandma was being beaten by him, and he would also beat my dad. My dad actually became a championship wrestler to fight back, and then the abuse
Mm.
was going down the line, and she finally asked for a divorce, and he killed her, and then committed suicide. And
And you kind of internalize that as like please the man to stay alive.
yeah, but I've always sort of felt her as one of my guides in a way. Like it
Mm.
just feels like she's with me. I've never met her, obviously, but I was just meditating the other day and I had this realization. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm also breaking the chains of my grandma for the first time standing up for herself and having her life taken. Like the
Hmm.
stakes are high. So I
Yeah.
wonder, I beat myself up for this. It's like we are all connected and
Hmm.
we're connected to every woman who has ever existed. A healer that worked with me with one of my miscarriages actually said, all mothers everywhere are with you. And I remember
Hmm.
just, it can make me cry right now because I could just feel that feminine presence.
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like we're breaking chains for all women everywhere. And the
Right.
stakes haven't always been the boyfriend or like the next date. They've been higher and
Yeah.
we still feel that. And so I think we
Hmm.
react to that in an instinctual level.
Yes. Yes. I mean, well, even with being intuitive and being psychic, like we used to be burned at the stake. So even with that, like women, I mean, men are extremely psychic when they tune in. Men are so psychic, but I feel like as women, we've had to lean more into our intuition just to survive on a basis. So I feel women are almost more naturally tuned in, at least on a feeling basis, not always in a neutral way,
Yeah.
but very much in a feeling basis. And men are super psychic in the sense that they can be very neutral because men are very good at detaching.
Yeah, yeah. My favorite tank top that I own says, "We are the granddaughters of the witches they could not burn."
Right? Right. Like we
Yes.
survived. Yes. Love that. Speaking on intuition, like that kind of goes into like kind of where my next question is. Like, so you said you were like in the courthouse and he had no remorse and something like clicked for you. So it seems like an aha moment. And I'm curious, like after the aha, like obviously you've like you're doing dealing with this felony and all this stuff and like so you're kind of picking up the pieces and that can always kind of seem like a very drudging thing. So it's like, okay, I've hit rock bottom or at least, perceivably I assume was your rock bottom and you're starting to try to figure out how to climb up, which is always not a pleasant experience. Were you intuitively in that of like, I have to keep going? Or was that just more of like, I have no choice. I have to keep going. I got to get out of this. Like, was that more of an intuitive journey or just kind of I just have to do this?
So it's a little bit of both. I don't, I did not feel connected to my intuition until much later in my 20s. I look at it as just not being a clear channel for so many reasons, for some of the fear religion instilled with me, for all of the self doubt that I had picked up along the way. And so I just didn't have the language for that or that understanding. But I will say that I always expected success for myself. I was an AP honors student. I was on the dean's list. People were always telling me how intelligent I was. And so this was actually an interesting point of like, now I have a felony. Now all of my job hopes are they gone? How am I going to find the level of success I've always expected for myself? And
Right.
so it was almost like I had this really positive story about myself and my circumstances weren't matching it. And so that was
Mhm.
fueling me in a different way. And I will
Mhm.
say also, like, it's easier to see that as an aha moment in hindsight. Whereas I know I felt just anger that he didn't seem resentful. I hated the face that he was making. I can picture it right now. It was like this face of like puppy dog despair, but I always wanted to freaking punch him. It was like every time I caught him in something, he had this face where he was like talking me into it. And so it still makes me angry thinking about it. But I wanted to get away from him. And I wasn't even supposed to be in that town for long. My mom had moved there when I graduated high school, and I was moving back from Texas, going to stay there for a few weeks and find a spot back in San Diego. And I ended up meeting him during that time. And so I stayed in Palm Desert for a long period. But I was like, where do I go? And suddenly, San Diego didn't feel right. It felt like I was backtracking. I went to college there. I wanted
Mhm.
someplace new, so I moved to LA and I was just looking on Craigslist, finding roommates, figuring stuff out. And I moved to LA. He didn't get jail time because he got two strikes, and I don't know, I helped him get a really good deal. And
Mhm.
so he ended up following me there, moving into a halfway house, like a senior living
Yeah.
facility down the street. He could walk to my house and he was tormenting me still. He threw a brick through my windshield. He broke into my house while I was sleeping. My roommate was terrified, so I had to move and get my own place.
Oh my
And then
God.
secret place. He followed me to a bar one day and followed me home. So he figured out where I lived there. And he would do weird psychological things. Like at that point, I was dating somebody else. And one day I came home and he had a Dave Matthews CD case because we had seen like six concerts together. And inside there was just like $600 cash. Like, I don't know if he was trying to say, like, this is what you're missing. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're stolen cash while I'm broke all the time. Great.
Right.
But
Right.
then he ended up being arrested for another string of robberies. And this time he got 11 years in prison
Ah,
with a
finally.
minimum of seven. And so he, I just finally felt free. There was like these energetic chains following me around. Like I couldn't really grow when he was
Right.
still doing whatever he was doing. And so I just was desperate to make different choices. I
Hmm.
didn't really know what choices to make. I was just trying to, it was like that Seinfeld episode where George is just like, do the opposite of everything that comes to your mind. But I was going to yoga and I was trying to hang out with different types of people. And so there was like these positive steps of actually connecting with my body. And I was really deep in my eating disorder at that point, and yoga
Oh.
was beginning to heal that. And then going out at night and doing copious amounts of Molly, and then like, but waking up early to go back to a yoga class, and then go to this spiritual seminar over here.
Trying
But
to find some balance, you know?
yeah, like moon circles, and I did end up. I my career was, it was interesting. I was diving deep into internet marketing because that was how I realized, okay, I could start my own business here. Ended up
Mhm.
winning a contest online for free tickets to Traffic and Conversion Summit, which is still one of the biggest conferences today on internet marketing. Then I won their Wicked Smart competition at the end, which I tied with one other person who's still a friend, actually. And he's almost a billionaire. But
It's
it set
always
up my
good to have one of
freelance
those.
career. Yeah, it set up my freelance career for a couple of years. And I ended up kind of getting poached for a job in an app company at that time. So I was finding my success. And so, again, good decisions mixed with just a lot of escapism in a way. But I'm grateful because I don't think you need to know exactly how you're going to do it or make all the shifts at once. It's
Oh
like
yeah,
the
no. It's a
more
journey. Healing is
good stuff
very
and the more good stuff piled up, just one by one, over about a decade, different things started to feel incongruent. And I also had a weird, like, internal protection mechanism. Like, one day I just started hating cocaine. Like, I remember doing a line and I was like, I hate this. It just like made me angry. And I still kept trying for like a week. And then I just never wanted to do it again. And then with MDMA, I was doing a lot of that, like 4 nights a week, like 8 pills in a night. And I just thought it was so fun. And then one day I took a pill and I just passed out. And I was like, well, that was weird. Was it laced with something? Tried a different one like the next night, passed out again, tried it over and over again because I really had a hard time letting that one go. And I would just fall asleep within like 10 minutes. And so I was like, I guess I just can't do this anymore. And
right.
looking
Yeah, your
back, I
body
was
just
like,
was like, I'm done.
yeah, I was like, nope, we're not going to do this. Like, if you go down this road, bad things are going to happen. And so some of it was my choices, and other, it just really felt like I was being protected in a way. But
Uh-huh.
over time, I ended up meeting the love of my life in an interesting kind of synchronistic way, also. And then I was called to give up alcohol. And yeah, just one step after the other. I didn't give up alcohol till I was about 35, 36. But
Well done. Well
was a
done.
nagging feeling for quite a while too, where I'm just like, I don't drink like I used to. So it was easy to make the excuses for.
Right. It's
Uh,
like, oh, I'm still functioning. I'm seeing.
yeah, I'm like, I'm not getting drunk anymore. I just want a glass of wine while I'm cooking dinner. But I just felt like
It
it
was
was a
time.
dependency. And so, yeah, that's kind of how a lot of my growth has gone, where I just have to, before I would spend sometimes years kind of ignoring that feeling, but now I've realized the more I listen to my guidance, the more I'm guided and the more rapidly I evolve. So I'm like, oh, I've heard this twice now. I guess I got to do something about it.
Right, right. No, and that's so true. Like it really, yeah, healing and coming out of stuff like that, especially when you've like self-sabotaged so like consistently for so long. Because Lord knows I've had my own like, oh, I was, I was super fit. I was walking like 20,000 steps a day. I was doing yoga every day. I was so thin, so fit. I was vegan. Oh, life was amazing. And then, of course, you hit the proverbial wall of something going wrong, and I went back to all of my bad habits, all of them. And because they felt familiar, it's like, okay, everything feels like destruction, so I'm just going to do the destructive thing. So yeah, no, I totally feel that. And one by one, sometimes you get back up on the wagon, sometimes you fall off. So no, no, I that's so relatable and absolutely true. And it's something we like beat ourselves up for all the time. Like we want to heal and we want to do better. And we feel like if we fail, then f just all right, throw in the towel. I already screwed up. Like no way around. And so yeah, it's something I would actually love to like just put out into the world like, hey, healing is not linear. It's much more something like this.
Oh yeah, it's that up and down graph. I actually argue it's more like going up a mountain. It's like a spiral.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you come back and you're like, God, I just saw this view.
Yep.
I've
Yep.
already been here, but you're there from a slightly elevated perspective and you're ready
Yes.
for information that you couldn't have received
Aimed on the
a
lower level.
thousand
Yeah.
feet down.
Yes, yes. And I do usually describe it as a spiral, but sometimes it's easier just doing the linear thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the spiral thing, I usually describe that, well, yeah, you come around like, oh, I just saw this view. I do that with, use it to explain like kind of my perspective of source and God is like, if God is all knowing, God knows everything, and the whole universe and every which way it's going to go. And we have free will. He already kind of knows that you're going to screw up like 10 times on this one topic. And you screw up, he's going to be like, yay, 9 more times, 9 more times.
Yeah.
Like he's going to cheer you on, and then you're going to come around again, and then you're going to hit that again. So that's, yes, I agree. It's very spiral-esque.
My view of God is more like the mechanism for the spiral. Like, it's
Mm,
like, it doesn't matter where you are or what path you're going. It is the divine matrix of all of the universal laws of karma and of preparedness and all the things that put things into place specifically designed for our growth. So there's zero judgment. There's just awareness of it all. And it's like, oh, you're here and you fell back down. But guess what? You've got a little bit of karma, you got a little bit of guidance, you got a little bit
right,
of this, you got the law of reflection. And so
right.
everything's gonna be right there to help you get back on track. And that is my God.
Absolutely. I love that. Beautiful. Well put. I like that. All right. So we've went over your story, which is incredible, and kind of how that healing journey went for you. And so what brought you to becoming a guide for people? Like that's always an interesting story because you said you went into marketing. And I'm like, oh, okay, so you had a career and you had some things. So I'm like, ooh, where did that turn into like, I want to guide people. I have a story to tell. I have a thing to share. I can help people. I would love to hear this part.
Well, I got really deep into all the internet marketing, free sources like podcasts. I was listening to Entrepreneur on Fire and Smart Passive Income and Tim Ferriss and all the ones that were popular back in like 2009. And I would listen to each episode with people's story. And I'm like, oh, I could do that. I could start an e-commerce store. And then I would like start to, but then I'd get all in the weeds of like, how do I do the graphic design of this? And I was just constantly learning a lot through those journeys. But I was again chasing the external. That looks like success, and I bet I could do it, rather than figuring out, okay, who am I and how am I meant to serve? And so there were different things because I was good at marketing where I'd get a little bit of traction, and then I would just burn out very quickly. And during this time, I started to develop a belief that maybe I wasn't cut out for sustainable success. I was like an ooh shiny person. I was like, oh, there's
Right.
my ADHD, like this is all coming out
Yeah.
and maybe I can't do this. And
Been
so
there.
looking back, it's interesting because while I, on one hand, think people need to try a lot of things, I think that we have to be very careful with the beliefs that we inherit or that we pick up through that journey. I like be really careful if you're going to be just dabbling to figure out what you want rather than going that inside out route. Make sure you're not creating meaning around what goes well and what doesn't, which I did. And so I finally got fed up though. And I thought, okay, what is my purpose? Like I had this idea of finding my purpose. I was like, is that even a thing? And I thought, well, maybe I should actually do the activities at the end of the Find Your Purpose books instead of just like reading the next one and hoping I somehow become through integration just because I'm absorbing and consuming.
Right.
And so I did sit down and I actually took like, what are my favorite jobs I've ever had? Or what is every job I've ever had? What did I like about them? What did I not like? What am I
Hmm.
endlessly curious about? If I look at my Audible and Kindle libraries, what does it say about me? If I were to do something for free, what are those things where I still like them without getting paid for them? And I just started compiling information about me, about who I am. I asked questions like, what does my story make me uniquely prepared for? What perspectives do I have that I only gain through experience? And so I got really good at self-inquisition.
Mm.
And the more that I did that, the more I started to see the patterns that I was creating through my existence and through my curiosity. And so I decided that everything always came back to the power of the mind, even when I was young, even when I learned about mind over matter and could not detach from that. And I swear to God, to this day, I mind over mattered asthma in a weekend. But, but
Wow.
I, I realized that's what I wanted to talk about. And then I was like, okay, well, what's the medium that I'm going to do this? And I didn't know how I was going to make money yet, but I was like, well, I can almost always talk myself out of getting on video. I don't have a good backdrop. And when I write, for some reason, I was getting in my head at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
that phase in life, although I feel like I've healed that at this point. But I said I could always talk. Like, if you ask me questions, like, I will always have an answer. And that is not how everyone feels. So
No, yeah,
I
yeah.
decided it would be a podcast. And then, just as so often happens when you make a definitive decision or you're on the right track, the universe meets you. And like a day or two later, Pat Flynn's email list sent out that he was doing his very first podcasting course. And so I
Oh.
was like, all right, well, I'm going to sign up for it. And there were two options, the digital version, or he was doing a weekend for like $3,000 to actually meet him in San Diego and go through everything together. And at the time, I was really broke. So I took out a brand new credit card that had a $3,000 limit. So I had to put like 100 on something else. So I could put on this. And,
We have all been there. Yes, yes.
but I knew how somebody growing their business would think. This is
Yeah.
his first time doing this program. He's going to be looking for testimonials, and I want to get to know him. I want him to know me. I want to impress him, and I want to be a star student. So I
Mm.
vowed to do that. I was, and it happened as I hoped it would. He invited me onto his podcast. He invited me on stage with him at podcast movement to share about my success, because it was also my success was his success. So
Yeah.
that's how we started the podcast. And really, I think when you're in alignment with what you're meant to do, I had so much enthusiasm and excitement. I also had a marketing background. And so I didn't exactly know how I was growing it. I had never trained to grow a podcast. But what I did become really good at doing was keeping my promises to myself. And so when I had an idea, I just did it, even if I didn't know exactly how it would grow it. And oftentimes that would lead to some other opportunity. And so it was everything from like the day I launched, I had planned to go to my co-working space and tell everybody and have these little cards to pass out about my podcast. But then there were fires all over LA. And I was like, man, there's going to be like half the amount of people there. But then I was like, I'll go to the nearest, to all of the nearest pharmacies, buy out every smoke mask, and then sit on floor 2, post in the WeWork network. And I was like, free smoke masks on floor 2. And every time somebody would come, I would take their phone, show them how to create an Apple ID to leave a review and sign up and subscribe to my podcast. And I got my first like 50 reviews that day, which adds a lot of validation. But then because of that, like different people connected me to other people. And I just took action on all of my ideas without the shame of like being vulnerable. And so within 6 months, I was speaking at conferences on podcast growth. I got sponsors. I got an app that wanted to partner with me to grow my podcast. And so, my life really shifted within about 6 months. But then through that, I think it was a really broad topic of the power of the mind and just being immersed in the work. I still took action on the things. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a course about this. What did I like? What did I dislike? I learned very quickly that I was really good at helping people kind of get out of depression. However, I much preferred working with the people that were already above their baseline, that were ready to go into creation mode rather than
Right.
survival mode. And so
Right.
I made some pivots based on that. And just in working with everything, it was actually just this last year, I was doing a keynote and everyone saying like, oh, how your story is so powerful. And I found myself giving responses to questions that I had never given before. And then I suddenly had this was one of those actual epiphanies where I started to see the idea of story from 3 different unique angles that most people don't go deep enough into.
Mm-hmm.
All 3 of them, they're coming from one or the other. And mind you, it was after a plant medicine retreat. I don't know, DMT had something to do with it, but then all of a sudden my book just poured out. And so this year I've made a lot of shifts into helping people process their own stories, but also to make it their superpower instead of something to hide, something to be ashamed of, realizing that it's really hard to grow a future from wholeness when you're rejecting parts of yourself that make you whole.
Right.
And those parts of ourselves are so important to reintegrate and to kind of find our power within.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also the aspect of story where that's what connects us to other people. It doesn't just heal you, it has the potential to connect with others and help them to feel that same transformation that you felt.
Absolutely. Because that's something a lot of people refer to it as shadow work.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of people in the intuitive community that at least I've run into where they're like, no bad vibes, no negative energy. If you have any, like, get away from me, or and it's all love and light and floof and fluff, which is fabulous. Love that for you, Queen. Amazing. But there's also the other side that is just as equally important and just as equally like there and present and has to be acknowledged, because if you just kind of like keep shoving that aside, as you said, you can't really come from a place of wholeness. So I love that you said that.
Well, I think that's part of the spiral that so many of us go through. It
Hmm.
reminds me of how there was a step in my journey where I was like, cut that shit out. Like if people aren't hell, like if I'm feeling drained by other people, then cut them out. And now I see that as levels. Like I do not need to leave toxic people in my life, but it is not very empowering if you have to isolate yourself from anything with a different perspective to hold your ground. And so you eventually make steps throughout it where it's like, okay, well, how can I stand in this shadow without being taken by it? How can I stand in
Yeah.
my mom's criticism without becoming her words? And
Hmm.
the same thing I think is like, especially for people who've gone through a lot of trauma, they might need that shift into just love and light to remember what it feels like.
Hmm.
And they will eventually realize that is unsustainable. You can't stay there forever. And
True.
they'll see their own shadows. And then it's like, well, how do I get back to that place? You know?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
you got to kind of fight that. You've got to find that through your own path because of, I think most people are a lot like me where I'm not good at being told. Like, you can't just tell me like, well, this will be easier. I have to experience it.
Right, right. I have to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hate being told what to do. I hate being told here's the way to do it. No, I'm going to go out there and figure it out. And yeah, sometimes I come back and go, "Oh, you were right." And sometimes I go back, I'm like, "You were right-ish. I did discover something else, you know."
I did that just this year where I was even admitting, I was like, oh yeah, I've overcommitted myself. But I was in my head, I was like, I don't think a lot of people are like me. I have a weird ADHD energy. Like I can handle all of this. And so I was almost saying it with pride, even
Yeah.
though I've been told by every successful person ever, don't do too much. And I was actually going through a program where they were using an example like, well, when you're coaching somebody who says like, well, I want to write a book and I want to start a community and I want to do speaking, like it's like, hold on. And I was like, wait, I'm doing all of those things right now. And so then I had speaking gigs lined up. I had just scored a book agent. I was like, I can handle all this. I was about to launch my program. And then I got pregnant. And I was like, I can still handle this. Like I was very productive last pregnancies, but I forgot what the first trimester is like. And then I couldn't get out of bed. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
was still trying to do it, still in denial. And so I got sick also. And then I really couldn't get out of bed. And I like was just feeling it and I was like, okay, what is in this for me? And I just knew. And I was telling my husband, I was like, you know what? Nope, this is what I did. And there's certain commitments within this that I'm going to keep because I'm also not willing to trade this mistake for the belief that it took me 10 years to build up that I will follow through with the things that I commit to. And so
Right.
I have to sit there and recommit to certain things, which things do I want to uncommit from? This is not
Right.
feeling a commitment, is reevaluating and a different shift in life. But I will never make that mistake again.
Hmm.
I know it now in my body for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And now I know it. It's like, have you ever read the book Stranger in a Strange Land?
No.
It's a
That sounds
really good,
familiar though.
it's actually a science fiction book. Some random guy at that podcasting weekend, I had actually asked him, what's a book that changed your life? And he said, Stranger in a Strange Land. It's sci-fi. And I was like, I've never read a sci-fi book. He's like, read this one. And it's a really interesting book. It's almost like how The Alchemist like teaches you things through the story, but
Yeah.
they have a word in there, and I think you'll notice it after this because I will find it all out in the wild. But it's called grok. It's what Elon Musk's AI is named after, and the idea of grokking. It's this word that an alien brings down, basically, but it's to know something so deeply that it becomes a part of you, and so
Ah.
it's one of those things, you know how language shifts our reality, and there's certain cultures that experience certain states of mind because they have a word for it and we don't.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
Well, that's how I see grok. Since I've known that word, it's like, no, I don't just want to know this. I want to know it.
Right.
I want it
Yeah.
to become a part of my being. And so, I want to grok it.
Yeah. I love
That's what
that.
happens when I
I'm writing that
actually
down. Grok.
experience something. It's you grok it now. But you'll hear it out in the wild. It's thrown around and it passes through if you don't have the anchor for it. But
I
yeah.
love that. No, I love that. Because as being a clairvoyant, like it's once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's usually my phrase of like, once you see it, you just can't unsee it. And it's really like I guess that's kind of my way of grokking it, is just knowing that like this is part of me and this is now part of my new reality, like learning about myself. Like, because really, we're all mirrors. You
Yeah.
see in someone else what is happening within yourself as well. And that's just the beautiful design of spirituality.
Yes. Mhm.
But yeah, no, okay. Yeah. So grokking. I love that. I love that. I'm just gonna, yep. I'm gonna have to tell my husband about that. I actually can't wait. I'm gonna text him, be like, we grok. That's what we do. We grok.
It's a great book too, by the way.
What was the name of it again?
Stranger in a Strange Land.
Stranger in a Strange Land. I love that so much.
It's the
Um,
resurrection story,
yeah.
actually, in a totally different mode, which is beautiful because that's part of what I talk about in my book. I actually go back to different biblical stories and say, if you looked at this through the lens of symbolism, here's what it would show you. And so often it's like somebody, like the premise of the story is somebody comes down with information, a beautiful way of living. People are changing their lives around it, and other people are threatened. And so they attack that. And
Yeah.
we often do that even within ourselves. We get new information and we resist it or we cling to it instead of just like taking from it.
Right.
And, and yeah, so it has a lot of symbolism within that.
Oh, that is so true. Because it is a thing, like, yeah, if you don't understand it, you just attack it. Or if it feels like it's threatening everything you believe, because, with, knowing a lot of religious people and also being spiritual, and even my my easiest examples, like when I was vegan, I would tell people, "Oh, I'm vegan," and they go, "Oh, I could never do that." And I'm like, "I didn't ask you to." Like, okay, I was just saying I am. I didn't tell you you should. It's just like they would just go in this whole thing, and I was like, that wasn't okay.
It's when somebody's identity feels like a threat to your own because you
Yeah.
can't stand in yourself strong enough.
hmm Well,
Yeah.
it was one of those things like at that time, I was living an extremely healthy lifestyle and I was very fit and very like I looked great. I still think I look good, but at that point I was like, oh, I had like the bronzy skin and all the muscles and all the things and I looked good back then.
I was vegan for 5 years, but now I'm kind of anti-vegan.
I was like, I'm not anti-vegan. It's just I try to balance it. I'm not all one way or the other. I'm just kind of I try to have a balance with it more now. But yeah, no, I'm not full anti either. It's just kind of like, all right, I see your good points, but not sustainable. Over here, I see your good points, but also not sustainable. So meld.
Yeah, I had to do what I do with a lot of things where I was pregnant with my second. I was just like, if I'm as healthy as I think I am, then my pregnancy should not be this difficult.
I thought
And
the same
I
thing.
had uh, the year before I had stayed with my vegan friend and she was also a chef. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to make us all the good vegan food. And I got there and she's like, I need to tell you I'm not vegan anymore. And I was like, wait, what? And she basically told me how she had almost died. She got down to like 85 pounds and she worked with a functional medicine doctor. She had been vegan her whole life because her mom was vegan. She had never eaten meat before.
Oh,
And he said, you are extremely malnourished. You need to get on animal products immediately. And so it was very difficult for her. And then
wow.
she did, and she healed very quickly after that. So she was giving me all these little seeds that weren't ready to be planted, and I was really resistant, but I had been sitting with it for about a year, and I moved from like, okay, maybe vegan's not the healthiest way to be, but it feels good for me. It goes with my
Right.
animal values and all that. And then with that, I just knew it just kept bringing me back to that. So I went to a nearby farm that I found that was a regenerative organic farm. And I like sat with the farmer's wife and people would come in and she's like, this is Melissa. She's a vegan and she's going to eat our meat. And I brought it home to my husband. I was like, cook me a steak. And he was like, what? And so I read a book called How to Heal Your Metabolism. And it really flipped a lot of what I understood about veganism on its head. But
Right.
even and the hardest part for me was like, okay, but so much of me now is doing this for the values of not killing animals and then learning there is no harm-free diet. There are
No, none.
millions of animals that are killed because just trying to keep up with the crops, and it's actually completely unsustainable for the entire planet to be vegan. And I think coming to
Yep.
that realization made me realize, oh, can't just completely change the world with this. Like, I'm not going to sacrifice my health for some like perceived ideal.
Right.
And yeah, and so I I love vegans and I know where their heart's at, but I don't, it's just not the way for me.
Right, right. Same, same. And that's the thing. Some people would actually ask me if I was doing it for animal safety. And I was like, well, growing up as a farm kid, like I loved animals. Like I knew the way we raised them was like, humane and fine, and it was a whole thing. So if for me, like seeing the corporate farms, I was like, oh yeah, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, yeah. Mine was just for health. And it, at the time, it was kind of what I needed. But then after a certain point of time, it was like, okay, I needed to make a shift and I missed my window. And yes, my health also suffered for it at a certain point. I had adrenal fatigue that
Oh
was
my gosh. I
horrid.
had a brain fog lifted that had just become my normal baseline. And I was like, oh my God, I can think again, which was wild. I didn't even realize it because, again,
Right.
it's like that frog in the boiling water. Like, it's just like
It's a
slow
slow.
shift to normalcy.
Yep, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no. We have so many good topics. I love this. We're all over. So you said you wrote a book, and so tell me more about your book.
Yeah. So I had this epiphany of realizing that I was just in a unique position of understanding things like, so I have a unique relationship with labels. I try to detach from all of them, but then there's sometimes where it really serves me. And part of what I love about my brain is the ADHD side of it. I don't look at it as a downside. It's just something I work
It's
around.
it's the spicy side. It's the fun side.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I love the way I will hook onto a topic and I'm like not sleeping and I'm learning everything about it, going deeper than people knew that you could go. And so I was doing that when I was deconstructing from religion. And I
Mhm.
learned a lot about how the Bible had been manipulated, where, like, when certain things were put in, how, for example, hell didn't even exist as a concept until 300 years after Jesus died. There was never a mention of hell in the original translation of the Bible. It was actually taken
Oh,
from Gehenna and Sheol, which were literal places that they disposed of bodies that were often used in parables. And so I started to see through
okay.
my study with Eastern religion, but then also what the truth of the Bible was trying to be, what it could be if you were to strip the literalism from it and actually see it through the symbolic lens. And I started realizing how important story had always been throughout our lifetime or throughout like humanity. And
Right.
so even in back in they used to have ancient mystery schools, the Eleusinian mystery schools that were these sacred initiation rites in ancient Greece. And they used story as a sort of consciousness technology. And so they weren't entertainment or historical accounts. They were more like narrative experiences designed to create specific psychological transformation. And so people would travel hundreds of miles on foot to go to these places where initiates would basically experience the descent of Persephone, for example, or experience a death and rebirth through symbolic storytelling.
Yeah.
This clicked in with what I had been learning through my podcast of 550 episodes with many neuroscientists. And one of the things that had stood out to me was Dan McAdams' research at Northwestern University, where he basically spent decades researching something called narrative identity. And so it's how the stories that you tell about your life literally become your psychological reality. And his research shows that people who construct coherent, meaningful life narratives have higher levels of mental health and well-being and resilience. Whereas people with fragmented life stories, and this could be from, a belief you picked up that doesn't fit with the success that you're trying to create, or
Right.
little pieces that don't quite fit, or this thing that you were told about yourself that you absorbed, but you're not trying to repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I started speaking on the last few years is just the idea of conscious creation. And I got really deep into the idea that, or the realization that we are always creating. And I think there's a really big misconception in the self-development world where people get exposed to the law of attraction and they're like, oh, well, I can manifest on Mondays, but the rest
Right.
of the I'm just going to wing it. And I was always arguing that, like,
I was just
well,
saying,
it's not,
everything you're describing sounds like manifestation. Yeah, 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 yeah.
but you can't just set it down. You're always creating, whether you're choosing to or not. And so there's no middle ground. You're either consciously creating or you're unconsciously repeating. And so you don't get to just
Oh.
let it go. You're going to be, if you're not bringing intention to it and rebuilding your new default, you're going to be unconsciously repeating old patterns. And so
I love that.
integrates your reconstructed past and your imagined future into this internalized life story that gives your entire existence unity and purpose if you do it correctly. But then I also had this weird marketing side because I've worked in marketing for 20 years. I was vice president of a startup, vice president of marketing of a startup, and all of my kind of research into figuring out my own success.
Uh-huh.
I realized that we don't people don't change behavior based on logic. It's always through story. Even one of the most popular marketers, Russell Brunson, he calls it the epiphany bridge. He teaches people to create an epiphany bridge where you don't sell people through the facts and figures. You walk them through your journey from your old belief system
Mm-hmm.
through the moment that disrupted everything
Right.
and to the new opportunity that you discovered. So people buy the transformation through the story, not the logic.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
I'd just done all this plant medicine, and all of a sudden these things were like, I was having like crazy visuals whenever I closed my eyes, and all of these things sort of merged together. And I knew what my book was going to be about. And I knew exactly how my story was going to help teach these concepts. And so I wrote a book called The Story Reset. It's currently in the hands of an agent that's pitching it to publishers, but it's all about the hidden narratives, or the how to hack the hidden beliefs that are creating your life right now.
Yeah.
So how to become conscious of the ones that are creating outcomes that you don't love, and how to reconstruct that. And so I do that in several different parts, where the first part is my story. The second part is the science of story. And I go back to a lot of those popular biblical stories, or even Greek mythology, and show what it was really trying to teach us beyond
Right.
the liberalism that we've adopted, and
Right.
how to actually become aware of your story and recraft it. And then the part 4 is how to become a teacher of that. Also, if you want to bring the wisdom that you're meant to share to the world. So that's my book.
Ah.
And yeah, it's been
I'm
really
like, oh,
exciting.
I need that now. I need that book now. Because with being like, being a psychic and also running a psychic school, wanting to teach other people how to do this, but I love that you're like, oh, you're creating, and if you're not intentionally creating, you're just following old patterns. And I'm like, don't call me out like that.
Well, it's true. And it sounds
It's
daunting
so
to
true.
a lot of people, because it's like, well, how do I bring that much intention? I want to zone out sometimes, you know?
Right.
But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
beautiful thing is you don't have to do it all at once, and you can't do it all at once.
Yeah,
But
of course
just
not.
like that spiraling up the mountain, you become convicted with small parts of it, and you do what you can there, and you become someone who's ready for the next step. But each time you work with an area, through the repetition, that becomes your new default. You don't have to think about it quite as much anymore.
Right,
It only
right.
takes 7,000 to 9,000 thoughts to rewrite a belief. And that sounds like a lot. However, we're having over 60,000 thoughts a day, and 85% of them are repeats from yesterday. So it only takes like 2 days of spiraling to completely create a belief within yourself. And most of us are doing this so unconsciously that we're
Yeah.
just absorbing whatever propaganda that we consume that day. Instead, it's like, how
Oh,
do you become your own propaganda machine? How do you decide what
right.
you're going to absorb and really
Yeah.
create your life on purpose.
Right. It's kind of like that saying of like the five people you keep around you affect your reality the most. I'm like, oh, that's kind of the same thing with what you consume. Which
Yeah.
it not just in like food, but also media and everything else. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. And I have a very good friend who also like has a background in marketing and she's fabulous. And she's also working in this very similar field of like unlearning limiting beliefs. And she's doing it through like meditation and courses and stuff too, which is fantastic. And yeah, she's in the neuroscience. I'm like, oh, this sounds so much like hers, but I love the way you've broken it down. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm just like, I need your book.
I will let you know.
I'm like, I need this book because yeah, no, like there's so many limiting beliefs that limit everyone, not just entrepreneurs, but like the belief that you're like a personal one for me is I'm annoying. I'm loud. I'm obnoxious. I laugh too much. I'm too much energy, you know? So from a very young age, everyone was like, God, you're annoying. And so I really fully like took that on. And so literally like on first dates with guys, I would be like, I know I'm annoying. I'm sorry.
Oh, I use that in my keynote speech. I actually use that as an example because I had this really deep inner child moment once where I was in a breathwork session and I just had this deep visual and I just remember seeing like my child self curled up and I was walking closer and it was like I could hear these voices in a loudspeaker and they were all of those things. It was like, you were an accident. Nobody even really wanted you. You're too loud. You're annoying. And why are you messing this up just like you always do? Everyone else can do it better than you. And
Mm,
I just had this like realization that it wasn't just this random act of cruelty. It was my own thoughts playing on repeat, like some sort of toxic soundtrack to this little girl's life. And
yep.
I just knew in that moment that I was the only person that could protect her. I was the adult that she was waiting for to tell her differently. And
Right.
so I had to have this really conscious process of going back through and telling that girl things, because really if we look at it from the spiritual level, we perceive time as linear, but really it's all happening at once.
All the time.
Th-
Yes.
that
Yep.
little girl doesn't necessarily know who I've turned out to be. She
Hmm.
doesn't know how it's all turned out. So she still has her fears, and part of that is still living inside of me. So, how can
Hmm.
I align her life story, align her life narrative to become more coherent so that she sees that all of her fears aren't so scary, that yes, scary things happen, but this is who we became. And
Right.
there's a really beautiful process in that where, yeah, it's like, what does that little girl need to hear? What's the truth of that? Were those things about you or about the people that were saying them to you? And if you could really consciously process that, I think you could feel some shifts.
Oh, 100%. Oh yeah, no, that's still something I contend with, especially with, being around my family because they were the ones who said it to me first.
I
So,
accidentally called my 4-year-old annoying once and I was like, nope, nope. I was like, sorry, you are not annoying. Mommy is annoyed. I was like, that's not always your fault, but I would appreciate some shifts right now.
right, it's like if you could just, yeah, no, I love that. No, I know, and that say I'm about to give birth, and so I've literally been like, okay, just don't do this and don't do this and try doing this instead of this. And it's my sister. She's like, I hope your daughter's just like you. And I said, me too. That's not a
Oh,
that's not a bad thing. Because it really like, because it's the mother's curse. Like you'll understand when you have a child just like you. And for me, I'm like, that would be the best blessing ever because I would know exactly how to talk to her.
well, and it's been so healing on multiple levels. So at first, having a baby, I got angry at my mom for certain things because then there's certain things that I saw and I was like, how could you say that to me?
Right. All the
Especially
things get lit up.
there's this one moment that I've like taken with me where I loved to sing, and I asked my mom if I could be a famous singer one day, and she's like, "Oh, you need some work." And I was just like, "Who says that to a child?" And I did not sing to people for so many years, and it's something my husband helped heal. He like heard me singing in the car. He's like, "You got a great voice," like, and so now I will belt it out
Belts.
and do
Yeah, yeah.
karaoke anywhere. But then, and so. during that phase where it's easy to not be at all annoyed with my children, I was angry at her. But then it gets to this point where I'm like, oh, I see how she got fed up. How long was I singing in that car where she was finally just like, yeah, we'll get there. You're 3. And so then
How
it
many
healed,
times do I hear wheels on the bus go round and round before I want to die?
and it healed the other side. And so it just
Right.
gives you this compassion where it's like, oh, we're all just playing the part for somebody else to come to their own realization. There's no real mistakes as much as we want
Right.
to see them as mistakes.
Right.
It's like, can I picture my soul and my mom's soul being up there saying, okay, we're going into another lifetime. I will play the villain so that you learn this, so
Right.
that you learn how to become it without external validation.
Right.
So it's been a really fun process.
Oh yeah, no. I've had that so many times over with my mother and my father, like go like just clairvoyantly and just meditatively like going into like a memory, like this is some of the healing stuff, like just being like, okay, when did I shut off my voice? When did I shut off my ability for this or that or whatever? And like pulling up the memory and the like pulling back and seeing like what was going on with the perpetrator of that memory, like the quote unquote villain. What was happening with them? And it's very much like that where you're like, "Oh, I see you were afraid and that's why you said that to me," or you were really fucking annoyed. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's very much the same process. And I know with children, like it's one of my terrified things is because I was raised with a lot of yelling and screaming. And it took me years to not yell and scream when I was upset. And my husband has been helping me with this. We've been married for 10 years. And so this is something that he can attest to that sometimes I said that she rears her head sometimes, the old me. Uh, but yeah, no, it took me years to heal that and not do that. And so I'm terrified with having my child that it's going to be something that's going to rear its head, that I'm just going to like go right into like screaming and yelling. And I'm like, oh God, I really hope I've healed that enough that I can like rein it in.
Well, it probably will. And also, I am a huge believer that our kids don't need to see us perfect. They need to see how we handle our mistakes. And
Right.
so, yes, I have reacted very poorly in many different instances, especially with my oldest, who is just like he is all of my deepest triggers. He's all brilliant, but he's like, he knows exactly how to push those buttons. And again,
Oh,
have reacted poorly, but I will always come back and tell him, that was on mommy. I shouldn't have raised my voice like that. Or you are not annoying. Mommy was annoyed.
mm-hmm.
No one should tell you that. And they
Right.
learn more in those instances than any other moment, because when you show up perfectly, which is impossible,
Right.
they can't relate to that. And I know
No.
plenty of people where it's like, my mom was just too stoic. I don't even know. Like, they don't even feel like they know her because she was closed down and didn't show the real sides of her.
Uh-huh.
Whereas I'm doing the best that I can and showing up the best that I can. And there's certain moments that I slip, but
Right.
I, I try to explain my own mistakes, and then
Yeah.
I am giving him an outlet for when he slips, how he can show up differently afterwards, how he can
Right.
just make a moment better, or heal a moment with somebody else. And I think that's more powerful.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for that. Like I needed that. Thank you. I need that. Um, we have been on for quite some time and I have loved every minute of this, but I think we probably should wrap it up. Do you have any last minute or remaining messages for our audience and how they can like get in touch with you? I will put all of your links down below and all the ways for them to get in touch with you. But yeah, any remaining messages for our audience?
Yeah, I think I'd just drill in part of what we said earlier about you are always creating. And so you are either consciously creating or you're unconsciously repeating. And there's really no middle ground. And that's not scary, because this whole divine matrix is set up to help you evolve past what you have been, who you want to be. And so the more clear you can be about the type of person that you want to be, the specifics that you do know, what you want to bring into your life, you'll begin to be guided to those opportunities. And so it's, I love the divine laws, like the law of reflection. Like, what keeps showing up for me? What patterns do I keep repeating? Why do I keep calling in this relationship? Why do I keep sabotaging in this way? Okay, what is in this for me? That is the law of reflection, externally showing you what's internal. And so then that's just the next step that you work with. And it can be this fun kind of playground. It doesn't have to be so serious. I don't
Yeah.
even like the term shadow work. That's why I call it story work, just
Yeah.
because sounds dark. It is what it is, and I know that that's just the term for it, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
sounds dark. Like you have to go through all the dark places and
Right, right. You're like, but I don't wanna.
but you can also look at it as like this life is an infinite playground of
Mhm.
expression and creativity and just I love the term expression even. Like, how are you
Yeah.
expressing yourself? How are you bringing who you are out into the world? And
Yeah.
so this is the next part that you play with. And sometimes it's dark and sometimes it's light, but
Yeah.
it's just, it can be lighter than I think we often make it. Not everything is so serious. And
True.
despite everything happening in the world, turn off the media and remember that life is beautiful. Like, look at a sunset, put your feet in the earth, and
Right.
you'll see that again, it's all a story. It's all a story that either they're trying to sell us or that we have already sold ourselves and we have the power to change that.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful. Oh, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and being vulnerable and being real. I love that you were so real. Like you were like, I'm not pulling any punches. I'm just going right in. Love it. Love it. Exactly what this channel is about, and I love it so much. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for listening to us ramble because our joint ADHD. It was fabulous.
Should remind you, my podcast is called Mind Love. You can find it on any of your podcast platforms. Mind Love or Mind Love Melissa on Instagram and mindlove.com.
Love it. Absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. I'll see you next time. Bye.